Hey everyone, it's the Monty Man, and you are about to take part in the experience, the strength, and the hope of this episode of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show.
Do not freak out. Do not freak out. Do not freak out. Do not. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Do not freak out.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, you! Yeah, you! Come here for a minute. I want to talk to you. Mama says you're brain dead, bang your head against the wall. Can't find peace of mind, brain needs an overhaul. Bonehead, brain dead, we're all the same. You can't think straight when your heart is in pain. Turn around, hit the ground, time to lay your burden down.
The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show are those of the co-host and guest and do not necessarily reflect those of our affiliates. The topics and opinions on today's show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice. Take 12 Radio is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. And now, here's your host,
The man, the myth, the legend.
the Monty Man.
I'm telling you the truth, man, I ain't gonna lie to you.
That's right.
Good guys, bad boys,
We're all the same.
saved by grace.
Is the name of the game. Turn around, hit the ground, time to lay your burden down. Welcome to the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show. I am your host, the Monty Man, and we are broadcasting from the studios of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting on the outskirts of beautiful downtown Albany, Oregon. And Margie is here. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, and there is Marv. Wave, Marv.
What?
Wave. Wave. You got to wave.
Marv.
Yeah. For all-
Hi, guys.
For all those YouTube guys and gals that are watching on YouTube, and there's Dave Fleming. Hey,
Otherwise known
Dave.
as Vid.
The vid. Hey, I got to ask you. I'm going to readjust this a
Uh-oh.
little bit.
You know, I almost feel like a kind of an episode of Cheers, you know, where Norm walks in, right? Instead of Norm, it's Vern.
I got to ask you, because we did a show with Ezekiel on Saturday.
Yeah.
Why is he called Summertime Santa?
Because, jeez. There was, at TC, they sell Christmas trees and they
Right.
do, they go out and they dress up and
Yeah.
stand on the corner and try to get, people in, you wave in the sign or whatever. And it was just one of those things that, it was, I think they were having some kind of a sale. I don't remember the exact
Sure.
thing that was going on, but it had to do with Christmas and it was warm out. And I said, yeah, I should get out there with, some shorts and we'll call you some sunglasses and we'll call you Summertime Santa. So it was kind
And
of
it
that,
stuck. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Because you ever watch the cartoons, right?
Yeah.
Of Kris Kringle and Santa Claus, all the animated stuff.
Right.
Well, in the summertime, he's like skinny, right?
Yes.
And he's got these huge pants on with the suspenders.
With the suspenders,
but
yeah.
he's super skinny,
Yeah.
And so that whatever picture came in my mind, I
Right.
said,
Speaking of skinny, and I'm certainly not there yet at all, but I'm like day 9 now of eating properly.
Very good.
So, listeners, you're going to go on this journey with me. Boy, talk about being held accountable. You got 155,000 registered listeners holding you accountable. You better stick to it.
so what's the
What's the plan?
encouragement? I mean, what do you want our listeners to do for you?
Pray for me.
Is this a wine?
No, this isn't a wine. It could be a wine, though. It could be a wine.
Tune in next week.
Yeah. So I went to Trader Joe's. I've never been to Trader Joe's before, and I was like a kid in a candy store. You know, well, I can't have candy, but I was at Trader Joe's and I bought Ezekiel bread, as recommended by our friend Ezekiel Hill. That stuff is really good, but it isn't made with flour. It's made with stuff that is already sprouted.
Sprouted grains.
Sprouted grains, right. Yeah. And so, I mean, no sugar. The carbs are really low. Yeah, not bad.
It's really good. You can try the different. They've got different
kinds.
Different kinds and different types. I think they've even got English muffins now. The best way that I like to eat Ezekiel bread is instead of butter, I use coconut oil. So you spread it on just like you would butter.
Right.
And then you take an avocado and you slice up an avocado and put that,
which is the good fat,
slice on top of that. Oh, it's the bomb.
Yum. So I started doing the apple cider vinegar. You know, the raw apple cider vinegar. You know, it's like a tablespoon in water, and
is it working?
Hard to swallow though, huh?
Well, it's kind of sour, it just makes you pucker. That's all I got to say. But it's fine, and it helps build good cultures in your stomach so you can digest your food better and all that kind of stuff.
Some people put water in it, or maybe some lemon juice.
Oh, I do. I'd water it down. That's for sure. But anyway, there you go. There. So anyway, the topic for this week is part 2 of how it works is still how it works. However, we're going to look at how it works in Narcotics Anonymous. And I told you last week that we would tell you what the main difference between Alcoholics Anonymous, how it works, and Narcotics Anonymous, how it works, which we will get to that here in just a minute. But before we do, we have to go here, right?
Right there. It's time for Monty Man's Weekly Wine.
Yes, indeed. This is a part of the show where the Monty Man whines about something he is totally powerless over and can do nothing about, but just likes to whine. All right, that music in the background. Anybody recognize it?
I do, but I can't think of where it's from.
So I don't know if any of you have watched the series Downton Abbey.
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah. So my complaint is not so much with Downton Abbey, because actually the people that don't love Downton Abbey are people that have never watched Downton Abbey. Marv, do you know what Downton Abbey is? Have any idea?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay. Did you ever watch? Did you watch any of it?
I used to.
Yeah?
Off and on.
Yeah. So we just started binge watching it, my wife and I, on Amazon Prime. And just for the listener's sake, the series is set in the fictional Yorkshire County estate of Downton Abbey between 1912 and 1926. It depicts the lives of the aristocratic Crawley family and their domestic servants, with some of the greatest events in history having an effect on their lives. Events depicted throughout the series include news of the sinking of the Titanic, the outbreak of the First World War, the Spanish influenza pandemic, and the Irish War of Independence. The sixth and final series introduces the rise of the working class. This show has just won tons of awards. Hugh Bonneville plays Robert Crowley, the Earl of Grantham, and Maggie Smith is Robert Crowley's mother, Violet. She's best known for her role in Harry Potter. She was Minerva, the Transfiguration professor of Hogwarts School of Wizardry. She's amazing in this show.
She is.
But my whine is this. They're killing off people that are main characters, and it's driving me crazy. It's like, no, because usually when you have a miniseries, they'll kill somebody off of importance, right? But they won't keep killing off the main folks. And my wife and I are very unhappy. The other thing that I'm disturbed about is miniseries in general. You have, especially with the onslaught of things like Netflix and Amazon Prime, particularly Netflix, they'll do one season or two of something and it'll be really good, and then they stop. and you never hear from them again.
That's true.
That drives me crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they do that where they split the season up.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll do
It's
three.
just crazy.
Yeah, they'll
do like 5 episodes.
Five
and then they'll
episodes and
come back in 8 months and see the other half, and like by then you're doing something else.
One of my favorite series was Suits on TV, and they would do like 6 episodes, and then you had to wait a year, and then they only do 6 more episodes. So there's my wine. I can't do anything about it. Years ago, I probably would have drank over it.
Well, you know, it's
Believe it or not,
it's limited, right? It's limited to a specific time frame, right? So
Right.
eventually, yeah, all the characters are going to die off.
yeah, I suppose. I don't know. Downton Abbey could go on forever, and I would watch it.
Someone can discover time travel, and then you can like kind of indefinitely.
Right? Did I give you one of these?
Or does that Doctor Who?
Oh, Doctor Who. Yeah, the flying phone booth. Oh, well. All right. That does it for my weekly wine. Not much to whine about.
So where's the win?
Downton Abbey. The win is Downton Abbey. I really enjoy it. All right. We'll be back right after this with the topic. How it
I
works.
never missed a day of work,
I wasn't living under a bridge.
I wasn't using needles.
But I'm lying to my family.
I'm lying to my friends.
I'm lying to myself.
I tried talking to my doctor.
I tried therapy.
I couldn't stop.
Then I found a safe place, Narcotics Anonymous.
And I stopped using drugs and got clean.
I stopped.
I stopped.
You can stop too.
For general information or meetings in your area, check your local newspaper or visit na.org.
Hey, check it out. The best in recovery talk and positive music radio is now available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and Podomatic. Simply visit any of these platforms and search for Take 12 Recovery Radio. Listen and download hundreds of our shows for fun and for free. Also available at take12radio.com.
Hi, this is Laura C., and you've tuned in to Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, the home of recovery talk radio and positive music.
Better turn my microphone on. Welcome back to the show. This is the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show at take12radio.com on your internet dial. And yeah, thanks to Cameron there with a little announcement about all the different podcast platforms that we're on. So you can listen on any of your favorite ones. We're on all the mainstream platforms now. Excuse me. So we're going to talk about how it works is still how it works in Narcotics Anonymous. Before I do that, though, I thought this was interesting. This is the question that was asked. What drugs have you done? What drugs have you done? Listen very carefully to some of the remarks to this.
I'm sorry? Drugs?
What's considered a drug?
Prescribed?
Illegal.
Do you want a list?
If you're comfortable. I'm not going to incriminate myself on the internet. I know better than that.
I can't tell you.
I'm not talking about I've done illegal things, but I haven't done any illegal drugs. I know I'm lame.
Pretty boring. I'm pretty boring. I'm afraid of losing control.
It's easier to tell you what I haven't done. I haven't done ayahuasca. I've only done meth a couple times accidentally.
I've done this really crazy one. Not many people have heard of it. It's called Claritin.
I don't think epidural counts. Alcohol. That's it.
Alcohol only.
Alcohol. I guess alcohol is considered a drug.
Alcohol, which isn't a drug, but then marijuana.
I've done marijuana. Done it. I don't know. Smoked it. Just marijuana.
Marijuana?
Marijuana.
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 Just weed. Weed.
Weed.
I've smoked weed like a couple times.
I am a regular weed smoker. I smoke weed every day.
I'm a little stoned.
You high right now? Oh, yeah. Always.
Yeah.
What drugs have you done?
Edibles, just weed.
I misgauged the strength of edibles before.
I mean, maybe like 3 or 4 of them. Big mistake.
I completely forgot that it was an edible.
What happened?
All of a sudden, I couldn't stop smiling, and my heart started beating super fast. The room is spinning, and I'm convinced I'm gonna die. I was throwing up all night.
Okay.
Wow.
Did you catch the one? I
pretty
used
safe to me.
methamphetamine once accidentally.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Well, I'm not sure. I guess there are a number of ways that could
Oh, yeah,
happen.
Someone could have put some in your weed when you were smoking it and didn't tell you.
Perhaps.
Or other things.
Yeah.
Cigarettes. What else? There's all kinds of things you can.
At least you didn't say I was shooting it up accidentally.
I had someone tell me they accidentally ate some cookies.
Oh, Alice B. Toklas marijuana cookies?
No, there's like family reunion on the table
Yeah.
cookies that no one labeled.
That were laced with pot?
That was the story anyway.
Oh, yeah.
By the time I had 2 of them, it was too late.
Well, there's.
That's what he said.
It is. Was it you?
What?
That's what he said. Was it you?
No. That's what he said.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't used any.
Well, I thought maybe in the early
over
days you
15 years
picked up a brownie or two.
Yeah, I don't. We didn't have that. I mean, I guess I didn't even think about those kind of things back in the day.
Very few people were even putting it in food back when I was active.
No, that was back when you can get 2 joints for $1.
Yeah. You can't anymore. It's been so long.
I don't know. I guess you can go down to the local corner store now and do that just about anywhere here in Oregon.
Yeah.
In California as well, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And so the edible thing's interesting because I was talking to Brandon Tafala, the student life coordinator out at Adult and Teen Challenge. And that was his main thing was marijuana, And I said, "What's the deal with edibles?" And he goes, "Oh, baby." I go, are they strong? And he goes, "Oh man, I guess they really, really."
Well, yeah.
they
You
pack
think
a
about
punch.
it. You're concentrating,
right?
The drug when you cook it, so.
Gee,
plus, you're putting more in it than you would if you were just
Right.
to smoke a little bit.
And then there was the one guy that said alcohol's a drug, and then the guy on the right in the heels, well, alcohol's not a drug.
Alcohol
is a drug, period, right? So interesting stuff. But yeah, so in how it works in the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then I've asked Margie to read the 12 steps, go through the 12 steps, and then I'll pick it up after that. In this, we'll see the major difference between Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and then we'll talk about it. So, Margie, go ahead and read. As soon as I read this first paragraph, read the steps for me. So it says, if you want what we have to offer. So it's starting off just like in AA, it's conditional. If you want what we have and are willing to go any lengths to get it. Well, this says, if you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it. So it's semantics, right? But it's pretty much saying the same thing. Then you are ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. Go ahead, Margie.
1, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Very well read.
Thank you.
Then it continues to say, this sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicted in one day. So remember, easy does it. Maybe not.
But do it.
Some people will become addicted in one day, but you understand the sentiment behind it. There is one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is such an important statement. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles. What are the spiritual principles they're talking about? Margie just read them. Yeah. So it's an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards that lineup of those steps. Again, like we talked about last week, working a program is actually following the directions, not just going to meetings and drinking bad coffee, right? And so if you have an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards these, it is going to defeat you in your recovery. And then it says 3 of these. Now, these are important. These are like the mainstay in Narcotics Anonymous. 3 of these, spiritual principles, that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Honesty about what? Open-mindedness about what? Willingness about what? So we'll talk about that in a minute. With these, we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the disease of addiction, and so in AA as well as NA, we are referring to alcoholism, or in this case, narcotic or drug addiction, as a disease, is completely realistic, for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that. We feel that our way is practical, for one addict can best understand and help another addict. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society in everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from returning to active addiction is not to take that first drug. If you are like us, you know that 1 is too many and 1,000 never enough. We put great emphasis on this, for we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we release our addiction all over again. Thinking of alcohol as different from other drugs has caused a great many addicts to relapse. Before we came to NA, many of us viewed alcohol separately, but we cannot afford to be confused about this. Alcohol is a drug. We are people with the disease of addiction who must abstain from all drugs in order to recover. And in that last paragraph describes the main difference between Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. So AA helped start NA in 1953. And by giving NA's founding members permission to adapt their traditions and steps, the primary difference between the 2 programs is that AA's focus is on alcohol and alcoholism, whereas NA's focus is recovery from addiction. In NA, we believe that the use of drugs, including alcohol, is but a symptom of the disease of addiction. So NA is all-inclusive, recognizing all drugs. Alcoholics Anonymous is primarily looking at alcohol and alcoholism. Now, I will say, however, that's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of Narcotics Anonymous, not necessarily the fellowship, because there are very few pure alcoholics anymore. We have a lot of people working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that never took a drink, but were using meth and opiates and was addicted to marijuana, right? Some of them were cross-using. They were using alcohol. They were using narcotics. And so we have a lot of people going to AA and working those steps. And we have a lot of alcoholics that are going to NA and working those steps. So there is a cross-pollination, if you will, of the 2 fellowships in many parts of our country. Definitely here in the Corvallis area and the Albany area. But the primary difference here is one is speaking primarily about alcoholism and one speaking about drugs in general. One of the things that is confusing for a lot of people, and it's in our terminologies, when we talk even, it's kind of what would you say? It's repetitive. We refer to alcohol and drugs. That statement, alcohol and drugs, is kind of like saying Boda bag. Boda means bag. Or I drove down the El Camino. Well, El Camino means the Camino. That's like saying I drove down the Camino. Alcohol and drugs, alcohol is a drug. And so Narcotics Anonymous recognizes that. So does Alcoholics Anonymous as far as the program goes, because it talks about, in one of the doctor's letters, it talks about alcoholism being an addiction, right? But many times members of AA don't recognize alcohol as actually a drug. They say, we talk about alcohol only here, not drugs. Well, alcohol is a drug. And by the way, if you are addicted to alcohol, right, you are a drug addict. Sorry, but you are, right? But that's kind of the main difference. There's another difference that's interesting, too, that maybe that's a little more subtle. In Alcoholics Anonymous literature, there is much more of a focus on a monotheistic God than there is in Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous is much more, the fellowship is much more open to he, she, them, it kind of thing. Not saying that AA isn't as far as higher power goes, but in the program, in the literature, it's very monotheistic about who God is. In Narcotics Anonymous, not so much. Narcotics Anonymous really promotes the idea, remove the narcotics from the addict and all will be well. In Alcoholics Anonymous, however, there is much more of an emphasis on that's not all we need to do. We need to develop a relationship with God as well. But it depends on where you meet. I mean, I've been to NA meetings in Los Angeles that were much more spiritual, much more God-centered than ones up here. I've been to AA meetings in Los Angeles that were crazy town, right? I mean, it just kind of depends on the terrain and where you go. The thing is, though, how it works is still how it works in both programs, and that's lined out in the steps. All right, let's open it up for comment.
I think Hollywood and the news media is kind of, what's the word I want to use? Kind of shaped the fellowship, if you will, because typically, alcohol is kind of portrayed as more professional. It's people that are in business, or you know what I mean,
right?
It's more encouraged or accepted. Where you look at drug addict, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get some homeless guy living on the street, Skid Row, someone sticking a needle in their arm, living under a bridge, doing anything and everything, prostituting, whatever it is this, low life. That's the way it's kind of portrayed, or it has been in the past. And so I think that's where some of that separation is. And I know we talk about fellowship. A lot of times the people that I've associated with, sometimes I go to a meeting because, I've got so much time and I want to get in, I want to do a meeting, I want to get out, where an Alcoholics Anonymous is usually kind of that way, right? Where NA is more of a fellowship where everybody's kind of getting together and hanging out. And sometimes an NA meeting can last 2 hours. I mean, I've been to meetings
to those
that last 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because you have a smoke break in the middle of it. And so some people are okay with that. Other people don't like that. And so I think that's where some of that mix gets, to get the true drug addicts are going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe they didn't have any issue with alcohol,
right,
or they didn't drink alcohol.
Right.
Or, whatever the person is, there's more professionals that have come out over the years that are drug addicts.
Sure,
that hold it together for the most part, or for most of the time, and then so they're more geared towards that.
Yeah,
the fellowship of AA. Because I never thought I was had a problem
with alcohol,
drugs and alcohol for 25 years.
Yeah,
I think I smoked meth for, if I added it all together, 10 years. you know, and I had always had a job and place to live and family, and you know, the quality wasn't all that great, but at least, you know, it looked like I was doing okay. So I didn't associate, you know, I couldn't relate to the alcoholic or the person laying, you know, in the street. Because that's where my mind went to, is an alcoholic or an addict is someone that you just can't keep it together and can't.
Which is interesting because that is the sentiment by a lot of people that are not alcoholic about alcoholics.
Right.
A lot of people will say, well, and people that are new in AA will even say it. Well, I always thought that an alcoholic was the guy with the brown paper bag under the bridge.
Or in the doorway, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, our possessions.
And a lot of that, like I said, comes from what the media and Hollywood portrays.
So Margie, was alcohol your only thing?
It was my main drug of choice.
Yeah.
But I also abused opiates and marijuana, and I guess that's about it. But you know, I would always eventually end up with my drug of choice, alcohol, because that was my thing, was alcohol.
Now, Marv, you kind of come from an alcohol only kind of guy, right? You weren't shooting up dope and
no.
Yeah. So alcohol was. How do you feel about this cross pollination thing in the meetings these days?
I'll tell you, I'm kind of going along with what Dave said. Maybe even a little stronger. It's been my experience in AA as I've observed that it's interesting to me, a couple of things. Number one, the idea of living under the bridge and sleeping under somebody's bush and looking for that fix is different in a sense from alcoholics, because the majority of drug addiction is more more vast, that live that lifestyle, where the alcoholic, it looks like to me the majority of them still have a job, they're still driving a car, for all intent and purposes, like Dave said, they look good. And so the somatics to me are important, because I really believe those different schools of thought, the big argument about alcohol and drugs, comes from that. Not because of what the books say.
Right.
But it's just this idea, a whole culture difference.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
And how many drug addicts, I can't count them on both hands, have come to meetings and they say out loud, I'm an addict, but I like Alcoholics Anonymous meetings better than I do NA.
And why do you think that is, Marv? I have my idea, but what do you think?
Well, part of my idea anyway, and I haven't thought about this a lot, is the idea of this one God. The focus of the spirituality, you know, and I may be completely wrong.
Sure.
You know, but that's what I've experienced and what I've seen.
Yeah. What do you think, Margie? Do you think? Have you experienced that there are people that are narcotic addicted that attend AA that prefer AA over NA? Have you heard that too?
Yes, I have actually, and I actually know of one young lady who I was outside and she drove up and she said, "I'm an addict. Can I come into your meeting?" I said, "Yes, of course." And her main addiction was marijuana, and but she stayed. She came to our meeting, and she'll have 6 months here at the end of the month, and
good deal.
Yeah, and I found a home with Alcoholics Anonymous, and it worked for her. It's been working for her, and I think Marv's right. I think it's the spirituality and we're focused on our higher power, which for me is God, and I think for most of the people in the program, it's God. I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's just, I've been to some Narcotics Anonymous meetings with my roommate, and they're not bad. Absolutely not. They're just different. And anyway, I do know people that specifically come to Alcoholics Anonymous instead.
David, do you have a different take on that? Because
I have a similar and I have a different take on it, and my one of my sponsors is talking in my head right now too. I don't believe there's a difference with the higher power. I mean, there's probably just as many people that believe in
a monotheistic God in NA as there is in AA.
It's just, I think there's more people that are NA, I think sometimes is more along the lines of what we call that, that spiritual kindergarten. I think there's a lot more people in there that are searching, and I think there's a lot more people that have experienced much more trauma. It's just my personal experience, my professional opinion.
Because you're from back east, or northeast.
I'm actually from California. Let's get it straight.
All right, that's where you're from.
We moved to Minnesota, which is the Midwest, right? In '94, and we stayed there for about 22 years, and that's where I got into got into recovery and had my spiritual awakening. And we lovingly call Minnesota the land of 10,000 treatment centers. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's that I embrace that, because it's like there is like so much. To me, there's so much more recovery opportunities in
Minnesota.
In Minnesota, in my experience. But when I started the first 2 years of my recovery, I was at meetings every day, and so I can't go to AA and I can't go to NA every day. So I've had to go to just about every meeting there is,
right?
Just to see what all the other meetings are like, what they talk about, the fellowship and everything like that. And it's pretty much, it's the same. It's just the numbers are different. Sometimes a little bit of the attitude's a little different, but it's the fellowship. It's the way society kind of interprets the fellowship, and so then the people that are in the fellowship kind of gravitate towards each that they feel like they fit in at the time.
Right.
And when I say my sponsor's talking in my head, he told me that it's important that, or we're obligated as people in long-term recovery, to make sure that we go to NA meetings, because there's probably less longevity in NA meetings than there is in AA. And that's, I think, typically that becomes, even as addicts, you mature, right? And so we want to go to a meeting. We want to just get in. Sometimes we have lunch break or whatever. We want to get in there and go to our meeting and get out. And NA, I think, for me, I feel like it's more, there's more, I don't know if I want to call it fun. But if it's a different take. When I go to meetings, I get something different from NA. I felt like when I went to NA meetings in the beginning, I got the missing piece, and it could have been just the meetings that I attended. But when somebody comes up and, gives me a hug as I walk in the door and welcomes me, and that's somebody that, the first guy that I remember that like caught me off guard was this guy that was like 6'8", and probably 350 pounds, biker guy. Gives me a big hug, tells me he loves me, and I'm just like, where am I? Like, what is this? And then when I started collecting my chips, people like there was people like lined up to talk about, you said something in a meeting one time and this helped me, and I was where you were at, and just all kinds of different things to build me up and give me a hug and tell me that I matter, and that's what I needed early in recovery. I think everyone needs to get that pat on the back and say, you know what, you matter, and thank you for being here. Thank you for helping, and you're doing a good job. And we don't when we get those things at work, we talk about it, right? I got this promotion, I got this, award or whatever. But I think everybody needs that pat on the back and told that they're doing a good job and that they matter. And we don't get that enough in our day-to-day life. And so for me, that's where I got that, was in an NA meeting. I didn't get that in an AA meeting.
So it's interesting because I went to the World Convention of Narcotics Anonymous. I mean, was it 2001, maybe something like that? Anyway, it was in San Diego, California, and I've been to the World Convention of Alcoholics Anonymous in San Antonio, Texas. There were a lot of similarities, right? The numbers of people. I mean, that's one of them. Just thousands and thousands and thousands of people who would normally not mix in both of the conventions. But I was at this. They had this concert at the Narcotics Anonymous World Convention with a guy named Dr. Bob, who he's a blues jazz guy, right? And he stood up in front of everybody and just bashed Alcoholics Anonymous. Stood up there and said, "Those guys are losers. What a bunch of blankety." I mean, the cuss words that were coming out of his mouth. We in Narcotics Anonymous, we believe in having a good time. Those guys are a bunch of losers, and they're MF this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, this is, we're in the years 2000 here. There's a lot of people at this convention that are also, people that attend Alcoholics Anonymous. And you're throwing them under the bus. I could not believe my ears. I walked out. I was like, why should I listen to this guy's music?
Yeah, it's not right.
It isn't right. I have to.
That happens on both sides of the track.
And I was just gonna say, I have heard that, not on like a world class level like that, because I didn't hear that at the San Antonio AA convention, but I have heard it at meeting level. I've heard people in Alcoholics Anonymous just thrash people in Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm like, my gosh, to a large degree, aren't we on the same side? We're trying to become. Here it says in how it works in NA, it says, we believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society in everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The whole idea in AA and NA, or one of the ideas, is to learn how to become a productive member of society. Why can't we work together? The steps are the same, right?
Well, you know what it is all boils down to? It's just about, it's people, personalities have kind of taken hold in a lot of places, and it needs to get back to the principles instead of, versus personalities.
And we say that in both groups. We say principles over personalities, but do we live by that?
Well, yeah, and we need to start doing something different then.
It gets glib after a while.
Yeah.
I was just sitting here and by the way, I want to clarify something.
Mm-hmm.
By what I said earlier, I'm not saying what's right or wrong.
Sure.
I'm not saying one way's right and one way's wrong.
Right.
Yeah. The very beginning when I started noticing drug addicted people coming into AA, I accepted that.
Right.
And that don't make me this good guy or saint or anything. I'm just saying that there's no right or wrong about it, because obviously, and I told you before the show started, I don't know anything about Narcotics Anonymous.
Sure.
But obviously, after hearing what I've heard, it's obvious to me that the program is all spiritually bent. It wants to come together on spiritual grounds. And so I don't...
Yeah, whatever that is to you, it is a spiritual basis.
I don't see right or wrong in it.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say that I kind of chuckle about is another thing that happens in AA is you get people getting on the grandstand and love and tolerance is our code. Love and tolerance, that's our code. And then as soon as somebody comes in that hard and fast alcoholic don't like, well, all of a sudden, well, we don't allow drug addicts in here,
Which always that cracks me up, because if alcohol is indeed a drug, and Alcoholics Anonymous, the organization, believes it is, the American Medical Association believes it is. If alcohol is a drug and you're addicted to it, you are a drug addict. So you're kind of contradicting yourself. I said that to our friend Dave N years ago, because he was going off on that. I said, Dave, are you addicted to alcohol? Yeah. Is alcohol a drug? Yeah. Well, then you are a drug addict. He did not like that. Yeah. He did not appreciate that whatsoever.
Well, we need to get back to remembering where we came from, right?
Right.
Because we all needed someone to care about us and extend the hand of a friendship and love and not judge us. And I mean, a lot of times that's why we ran away from religion, organized religion, is because, even though, again, they, in some areas say, judge you, even though they say we don't judge you. And it's the same thing kind of happens in the room.
It does, doesn't it?
And I, this is a big, kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that we need to, I think, remember where we came from, so that when the newcomer comes in, we don't impose these crazy beliefs. I started this meeting over in Wisconsin, and we were trying to add people. We moved it to a different facility, and we added a bunch of trusted servants to help run the meeting. And this girl came in one day, and it was the only meeting that was going on. It was an AA meeting, and half the crew in there was also in NA. And she came in and she said, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic addict. And she was pulled aside by somebody that, is lovingly referred to as one of those NA Nazis.
Yeah.
Right? And she basically told her, she said, if you're going to come here, you need to address yourself as an alcoholic. If you can't do that, you need to go to an NA meeting. And that about crushed this girl, and she ended up going and relapsing that night, and ended up in a coma in the hospital for 2 weeks and almost died. And I'm not saying it was this person's fault, but all it would take is someone to show a little kindness and not judgment.
Absolutely.
I don't care. The only requirement for membership to any of these fellowships
is a desire to stop doing whatever
desire
it is.
to stop using.
Yeah.
Or drinking, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. I get a little excited on this because there's people out there that stop going to meetings and stop going to to church. And all churches is a building where like-minded people go for fellowship. Same, And so when people start putting their own personalities in the spin all this, I just get really heated, and it really irritates me.
And so the comeback for that oftentimes when a person goes out and relapses because a person was quite frankly cruel to them, is people will say, well, they need to learn to be able to just suck it up, and they can't blame that person for using. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes a person isn't capable of doing that yet.
Right.
They've been chewed up and spit out, and like
multiple times.
And like Marv said, and it is a different culture. People that are for the most part addicted to narcotics, there is a different culture there, to a great degree, and so you have a lot more of now. There's a lot of people that are homeless that are alcoholics, but when it comes to all the narcotic abuse that's going on today, the epidemic of it, particularly in the opiate arena, you have people that have been chewed up and spit out by the streets. They walk into a meeting. All they know is they want help. They don't know what, they're at the end of their rope, and some knucklehead says, take the cotton out of your ears and shove it in your mouth. You have nothing to say. And if you're not going to refer to yourself as this, then you need to go somewhere else. That to me is a spiritual behavior, but it isn't the
Right.
good kind.
Right.
It comes from the pits of hell, and I don't tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. So
It's hard to know for people that are struggling with, a drug addiction, apart from alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. To even start this whole process a lot of times because alcohol is accepted. Right. It's okay for you to be an alcoholic these days.
And in some jobs, you're expected at 3:00. They bring the card out for you to start, in law offices, construction. I mean,
yeah,
it's promoted.
Dude, I had this one job that never forget this. I had like a Christmas party, and like earlier on the day, everyone brought in their gifts, right? Because they exchanged gifts. This is like all the leads.
Yeah.
And here's a freaking table that's like fifths of gallon jugs of whatever alcohol you can imagine with a little bow stuck on each one.
Yeah.
And that's what they traded.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? I was thinking, like, where the hell did I end up? But yeah, I was like crazy. Like this is a culture that we allow ourselves to be into, and it's accepted to be, it's more accepted to be an alcoholic than it is to be addicted to say opiates. After maybe you got an accident or an operation and prescribed opiates, and now you've kind of got you've got yourself hooked on them.
Margie, let me ask you a question. As a woman who is living in recovery, have you found there's a different attitude towards the female in recovery than the male in recovery? I mean, because there was a time in Alcoholics Anonymous, women were not allowed in the meetings. In fact, African Americans weren't allowed in the meetings years and years and years ago. Do you find that there's a different, or do you feel like everything's okay?
Well, I started back in Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, let's see. Like 25 years ago. And,
yeah.
Back then, I think there may have been a difference. There was just less of us women. And I think we were treated like really fragile beings. And which I'm sure we were, but I think everybody probably was. And but as time has went on, I feel now that I believe that it's pretty much 50-50 with men and women in the program. And I know that it is just women with substance abuse problems, addiction, alcoholism. The number has just skyrocketed. I'm not sure why exactly, but it has. And I don't feel like I'm treated any different in the meetings because I'm a woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just have to, I know because I work with women,
right,
as a counselor, and I've heard some stories, people
get
that
that
are serious
sometimes?
about being in recovery. They go to a meeting and then they get hit on at a meeting, and it's like, I come here for recovery, not as a dating site. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they call it 13 stepping.
Sure.
People joke about it all the time. I think it's unacceptable. So it's hard to find a really. This is what I've been told. Right, it's hard to find a really good NA meeting for women. I know there's a good one in Corvallis. That's what I hear. I'm sure there's more out there, but there's a few and far between. I went and looked some up to try to give some resources out, and there's probably not as many as there should be, and I think part of that is there's still some there's still people out there. It's like kindergarten, come on, or high school, right? What's high school like?
Yeah.
Right, with boys and girls. I'm going to say. I'm not going to say men and women, but.
Well, and so let me touch on this, and we're almost out of time. But here's the interesting thing too, is there's this stigma that 13 stepping is about guys hitting on women. Let me tell you, there's been plenty of gals hitting on guys before.
Right.
I've been hit on by other guys. Because we have a whole new, different culture now with that is, I mean, it's always been there, but it is way more prevalent, and people are much more open about the same-sex attraction culture within our recovery fellowships, right? And so it isn't 13 just isn't guys hitting on gals. But I've watched this one gal, this friend of mine, welcomed her to the meeting. He was the door greeter, and she came. You need to tell him to not hit on me. He wasn't hitting on her. He shook his hand and was friendly. It's crazy. Things have gotten bizarre, and it comes back again to how it works is still how it works, right? These are the same steps, the same principles. There may be more of a focus on a monotheistic God within the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's plenty of people that believe that way in Narcotics Anonymous. I have heard things that in Narcotics Anonymous, there's more dances and more campouts and people have more fun. Alcoholics Anonymous are kind of stick in the muds. I don't know. I've been to campouts and dances and stuff that Alcoholics Anonymous sponsored. Plenty of them. Again, a lot of it can depend on what part of the country you're in.
Well, it depends on how involved you want to be too. Because I know,
sure it does.
Back when I was, going to meetings all the time, there was stuff going on in just about every fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Or everybody was invited to every other's fellowship.
Right.
And if you were bored, it was your own fault because there was stuff going on at least 2 or 3 nights a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to tell you guys this story to close here, which is I still find one of the funniest things that I've ever witnessed in my life. There was a 12-step meeting building, let's put it that way, not too far from here, several years ago, where on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Alcoholics Anonymous met in that building. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday, and Sunday, Narcotics Anonymous met in that building, right? Each group had its own service structure, the GSRs and secretaries and all that kind of thing. And each group had its own business meeting. The interesting thing about this is that there was a real focus constantly being brought up because they both met in the same building, that they absolutely were not affiliated with each other, which is true, right? We're not affiliated with any program that's like this. Right? The interesting thing is every single member of the AA group were the members of the NA group. Every single one. So they'd have a business meeting, an AA business meeting, right? Where they would vote on something they wanted to do with the building or improvements they wanted to make or dances they wanted to do. And then they'd turn around and have the business meeting for the NA meeting, and they would argue about what the AA business meeting wanted to do versus what they wanted to do. And it was the same people. It was the most bizarre. And so then they decided they were going to have a combined potluck. Somebody from the area, one of the area service reps from NA, I thought he was going to have a cow. You can't have a combined potluck, but we're the same people. So we'll just call it something other than an AA or NA combined thing. Well, you can't do that either. I mean, it was bizarre.
Didn't they come up with there's a group out there called All Recovery Anonymous or something?
Probably.
Yeah. Probably stemmed from similar. Yeah. I think we get, I mean, I get the separation, but I think we take things a little too far sometimes.
So step 12, in both fellowships, having had a spiritual awakening as what? A result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to, and you can fill in the blank, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. All our affairs. Whether it's meetings, whether it's business meetings, whether it's your job, whether it's your church, synagogue, whatever, in all your affairs, you're trying to do, including your communication with each other. If your buddies an NA guy and you're an AA guy, or somebody's a CR guy, or somebody's an Alcoholics for Christ guy, or whatever.
I think, isn't that covered in all your affairs?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but except this, because that's not right, blah, 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 blah.
Again, this all goes back to personalities.
It does.
And, yeah.
So, Marv?
Yes, sir.
Give us some cowboy wisdom here. What do we do about all this as we close out the show? Can we do anything, or do we just trust God and love people?
Oh, boy.
Put Marvin in a spot.
No foot, no horse.
No foot, no horse. Explain that.
Well, if you don't have a foundation, it's all going to fall down.
Yeah.
And we have a foundation. We just need to use it.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. There you go. All right. Very good. Good show. Thanks, everybody. Our closing song, and by the way, listen to the end of the songs and you'll know how to get the song, how to be able to purchase that, or the CDs as well. Our closing song is by Mark Elder, and it comes from his CD Just for Today, A Journey in Recovery from Addiction. It's entitled Dancing with His Demons. Here's Mr. Mark Elder.
He looks somehow for some way out, so there's only one way to go. So he takes a drink and he denies he's dancing with his demons tonight. He's turned from everyone he loves, cause they don't understand. Now whiskey's all that he's got left, it's his only friend. Insanity clouds his sight. He's dancing with his demons tonight. And they're going and cuss him like a knife. Yes, he's dancing with his demons tonight. Even though it's killing him like a moth drawn to a flame.
Mark Elder from his CD, Just for Today, A Journey in Recovery from Addiction. To get this CD and Mark's other music, go to cdbaby.com and type in Mark Elder in the search bar. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
Good guys, bad boys, we're all the same. Saved by grace is the name of the game. Turn around, hit the ground, time to lay a burden down.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Cause she's a super cat, she's super kitty, meow.
Yeah, kitty, 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 meow.